Welcome to Fan for Racing Radio. I am Fan for Racing Sharon, and joining me today is Jay Husmann, and we are here for the Kansas review for the NASCAR Cup Series. They raced on Sunday. Your overall thoughts of the race, Jay?
Well, I'd like to say it wasn't another Kyle Larson absolute dominance. And I know we're going to talk about this in Hot Topics as far as that, but statistically, it really was. He actually maximized points, won both stages, won the race, and picked up the Fast Lap Award. So,
and was the pole sitter.
There you go. And we'll talk about the numbers here in a minute, but there was some competitiveness within the race, and I'll give some opinions on that throughout and in Hot Topics, but it was a Kyle Larson woodshed butt whooping.
He put on a clinic. There's no doubt about that. All right, let's go ahead and get into the Advent Health 400 that was at Kansas Speedway. Kyle Larson dominated. He actually was the defending winner from last year, so he successfully defended that victory. Last year, Kyle Larson won the spring race at Kansas Speedway by the thinnest of margins. You'll remember it, by 1/1000th of a second against Chris Buescher. And this year on Sunday, it wasn't the closest finish in history as it was last year, but it was Kyle Larson picking up the victory again, putting his number 5 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet on the pole Saturday, and then getting that victory in a more decisive fashion by leading 221 of 267 laps at the 1.5-mile track known as Kansas Speedway. For Larson, it was his third win of the year. He's tied now with Christopher Bell with those 3 wins. It was his third win at Kansas and the 32nd career win for Kyle Larson. Christopher Bell did finish in second place, followed by Ryan Blaney, Chase Briscoe, and Alex Bowman. Then it was Josh Berry, Ryan Preece, Chris Buescher, Joey Logano, and John Hunter Nemechek. Larson started from the pole and dominated again. He led 221 laps on the day. That's the most laps ever led by a driver in a race at Kansas. He was also never seriously challenged for the lead while he was out front. He also earned the fastest lap bonus. Stage 1 and Stage 2 was also won by Larson. There were 15 lead changes among 9 drivers, 7 cautions for 37 yellow flag laps, and the average speed of the race was 129.740 miles per hour. Shane Van Gisbergen was the highest finishing rookie of the race. He finished in 20th place. Now, the fastest lap award we mentioned was Kyle Larson. He achieved that fastest lap on lap 2 at 30.288 for the speed amount of time around the track. The gap really wasn't as much as you might think for as dominant as he was. The margin of victory was 0.712 thousandths of a second.
Well, we'll dive into that here in a little bit. But just to start with, first, the expectation. You saw Kyle Larson and Chris Buescher start on the front row. Again, Buescher had the pole up until the last car, which happened to be Kyle Larson, took it away from him. So we thought we might see a repeat of last year's closest finish. Unfortunately, that did not come to fruition. You do have to appreciate the talent and what you're seeing with Kyle Larson, yes, especially with this next-gen car. You know, Sharon and I were just talking about that off camera in between videos of he obviously has it figured out. It can be figured out. So some of the other teams, to include his own teammates, still got a little bit of work to do.
And as you mentioned offline when we were talking, Josh Berry raced from the back to the front, so it can be done.
Twice, because he started in the back and worked his way up, and then had, I believe it was a pit road penalty that sent him to the back, and still come back to finish sixth. Again, there is passing. It can be done, especially at a track like Kansas. I don't know what more to say. I mean, the statistics speak for themselves when it comes to Kyle Larson. I know he's getting ready. He's running in Kokomo, Indiana tonight in a sprint car, I believe, and then headed to Indianapolis. So that just tells you, I mean, his commitment to racing, the talent he has. So we'll talk about the rest of the field here. Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, we're closing there at the end. A couple different variables. We talked about the tires as far as coming into next weekend. Sharon was talking about adjusting the air pressure, especially when they start. And Kyle Larson, I will say this. I want to go back to Kyle Larson for a little bit. It's possible he had a tire going down or going to come apart there, which I think he had like a 1 point something second lead. You mentioned the margin went down to 0.7. Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney were both drooling because they knew they were gaining. I think that was Kyle realizing what was happening. But even throughout the stage wins, I think we see a different, and this is scary, a better Kyle Larson. Because I feel like in the past, he would have ran it until it blew out and then had bigger issues and not finished the race or been multiple laps down. He managed his tires, I'll put it that way. I'm trying to think of the word he used, but he was aware that they were going away and what he had to do to handle that. And I think in years past, we haven't seen that as much. I kind of think of him like Rusty Wallace, a checkers or wreckers, first or last, which is why Rusty Wallace, unfortunately, only has the one championship, because you got to be consistent with it in order to win the championship. And I think we're seeing Kyle Larson develop into that. Now then, going beyond Bell and Blaney, again, they were competitive all day. There were a couple of others that I felt due to mistakes. We talked about this. At this time of the season, you better start minimizing or eliminating mistakes, especially when you got somebody like the team of Kyle Larson. Driver, team, pit stops, all of it, they are just on point. And if they do make a mistake, they recover from it really strong. So there were a couple other teams that I think maybe made some mistakes. Talk about Josh Berry of starting from the back, having to come back and just getting back up to sixth. Well, what if he hadn't had that mistake? Again, was anybody going to pass Kyle Larson? Yeah, it'd be tough to say. Yeah, it'd be tough to say yes or no.
Ryan Blaney did say he thought that he could have passed him had the race been a few laps longer.
Well, and that's what I said of a half a lap or even a lap, and we might have seen a whole different finish. And there again, I know we're going to talk about that, or I'm going to talk about it when it comes to hot topics. Chase Briscoe, solid run there in fourth. Same with Alex Bowman. Josh Berry just mentioned. Ryan Preece, again, started 30th. Chris Buescher had the up and down day, started outside the front row there with Kyle Larson, but ended up with the 8th place finish. Then Joey Logano, you're grinded out, 10th place finish, John Hunter Nemechek. I really like what I'm seeing out of Legacy. They are not out there winning races yet, but we are seeing that steady improvement. You don't go from being 25th to top 5. We see them top 10, top 15 every week. Once they take that next step, we're going to start seeing them in contention on a more weekly basis.
Yes.
I know I'd asked Sharon, Chase Elliott was the one at one point on the restart, at least was alongside Kyle Larson. They had a little bit of a battle. And there again, who pushed it the hardest at that point? And I really couldn't remember. Sharon, you said you thought Chase Elliott had a pit road mistake. There again, went from being in the top 5, battling for the lead, to finishing 15th. You just can't have that in this day and age with the competition at the level it's at.
Okay. And Chris Buescher, the guy who finished 1/1000th of a second behind Kyle Larson in last year's race, he had that 8th place finish. But I'm looking at some of these guys that started from the back. Alex Bowman started from 21st place. Chase Briscoe from 19th. Josh Berry from 38th, Ryan Preece from 30th. So these are all drivers that came from the back and raced their way into the top 10 finishers. So I just wanted to point that out. Also,
and it wasn't due to a major of flipping the stages or anything. That was outright racing.
That was racing and taking care of their car to get it up into that top 10. Now, there were some drivers that had some issues, and we'll go over those. AJ Allmendinger blew an engine on lap 6. So that was unfortunate for him. Brad Keselowski once again had an accident that took him out of the race on lap 194. On lap 196, it was Denny Hamlin. He had a drivetrain issue. He kept talking about problems with his clutch. He ended up out of the race on lap 196. On lap 197, Ty Dillon had an accident that took him out. Daniel Suarez out on lap 201 due to an accident. And another accident on lap 212 took out Bubba Wallace. The DVP policy prevented Eric Jones from continuing on after lap 218. And I believe all the rest of the cars, Justin Haley was in 31st. There were 20 cars that ended up finishing on the lead lap, including the rookie Shane Van Gisbergen. The rest of the cars finished a lap or more down. So it's unfortunate, but things do happen in a race that cause the drivers to run into problems. And this race wasn't necessarily an exciting race to watch, especially at the finish as it was last year between Chris Buescher and Kyle Larson. I do think we're seeing history in the making, and I don't think we always appreciate it when it's happening, but it's definitely history in the making.
There's no doubt there. Brad Keselowski, when he had his issue, it's listed as an accident. They call it the announcer's curse, was running second, and they said running Kyle Larson down. And they said it might have been that he had started that, coming off that pit stop, that he had started on a little bit lower tire pressure. Well, with that, tire gave out and he hit the wall, again, beyond repair. Denny Hamlin, another one that I think had a car that could have contended with, I'm not saying beat Kyle Larson, but contended with, because even with the clutch issue, was in the top 10 until it finally gave out and broke him completely. Then you got two that I wanted to hit on. Trying to remember what William Byron's situation was, but Kyle Busch and Bubba Wallace. Again, top 10 finishers, I'd say. Not necessarily race-winning contenders, but top 10 finishes or thereabouts. And based on a mistake on pit road, they got in the back. Kyle Busch won of purely just in the wrong place. The battle was above him. They got 2 and 3 wide. They bumped and banged, and they got shoved down into Kyle, who was on the bottom minding his own business when he got body slammed.
I know, poor guy.
But that comes from a mistake on pit road that put him in the back in that position. You know, same with Bubba Wallace. So there again, it's these little things that get you a little further back. And when the circus comes to town and you're riding around with the clowns, you know, I hate to use that, but I mean, that's what happened. You know, I mean,
that's the term that Kyle Busch used when they explained to him that it wasn't necessarily the car next to him that took him out.
Oh, was it? I didn't even hear that, but yeah.
He goes, it doesn't matter. They're all clowns.
Gotcha.
So it's funny that you use that terminology.
Yeah, no, I guess I hadn't heard that, but you know, it is when you get back. I mean, racing in the back of the pack is clearly different than up front. We've heard drivers that talk about that. Carson Hocevar being one of them. You know, he said, I'm used to racing in the back. It's different when you get up front. So they'll have to learn that. But again, there's several that I feel cost themselves a good finish or a shot at even trying to battle Kyle Larson because of what their team did as a whole. And I know the morning drive for sure gave him a big shout out. The top finishing 2311 team was Corey Heim, finished in 13th. in
Yes.
that number 67 car. And like you said, started 28th, stayed out of trouble, managed his car, and finished 13th. So, yeah, big
That's
shout out to Corey
something right
Heim.
there. That says a lot right there about his talent.
And Tyler Reddick, I mean, he started fourth, but other than that, I don't know that he got talked about throughout the day. And Kansas is a 23-11 track. Got their first win there with Kurt Busch. I think each of the drivers, I'm trying to remember how many wins they got there, but each of the drivers does have a victory there, Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace. So expected more out of them.
Yes, I think when we did the preview, we were talking about that as well. So there's some things going on with the points here. So let's go ahead and talk about that.
Well, and there was a swap, if you can believe it, even with the 3 wins, it took Kyle Larson to now to get ahead of William Byron. William Byron has been so consistent, but he had a bad finish. Kyle Larson, an absolute dominate finish. Like I said, maximized all points he could. Yeah, William Byron ended up 24th, 1 lap down. I'm trying to remember what his exact issue was, but that, like I said, of having a little bit of a rough day, and then Kyle Larson just having the absolute best day. Now up by 35 points in the point standings. He has 3 wins and 8 stage wins for a total of 23 playoff points. It's not as big a gap as we saw in some of the others. William Byron still second, minus 35, 1 win and 3 stage wins, has 8 playoff points. Christopher Bell, with his 3 wins in a stage, has 16 playoff points. Chase Elliott, again, kind of a mediocre day, but solid, 4th in points, no wins, no playoff points. Again, just riding. I mean, I don't know how else to put that. Ryan Blaney has 2 stage wins for the 2 playoff points. Tyler Reddick, zeros across the board, but sits in 6th. Denny Hamlin, with 2 wins and 2 stage wins, has 12 playoff points. Then you got Alex Bowman, another Hendrick Motorsports car, just being solid week in and week out. Now up to 8th. He had gone as low as 10th. Joey Logano, having a couple of good weeks, has gotten himself into 9th with a win, 2 stage wins for 7 playoff points. Bubba Wallace, again, throughout races, has done well. As far as the stage points, he does have 2 stage wins, so he has 2 playoff points. Then you got Ross Chastain. Chris Buescher improved himself up. Chase Briscoe, Austin Cindric with the win, 2 stage wins for 7 playoff points. And then Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 15th. 16th is Ryan Preece, who has a stage win, 1 playoff point. However, Josh Berry in 17th has the win and 1 stage win for 6 playoff points. Puts him in. So Preece is out. Stenhouse is the cut line at 258 points. It is only 7 back, though, to Ryan Preece, and then another 7 back to Kyle Busch, 10 more back to John Hunter Nemechek, 4 back to Carson Hocevar, 2 back to Michael McDowell, and then the 3-way tie between Austin Dillon, Zane Smith, and Todd Gilliland at 227 points. The scary thing is here, we've seen Michael McDowell come close to winning. Carson Hocevar has had some good runs. There's a couple drivers down there that we know could get wins. So that cut line, ever so important. Like I said, Chris Buescher was right in that last week and the week before. He is now in 12th, got about a 30-point gap to Ricky Stenhouse. So getting himself above that, again, if winners come from below the line, it doesn't put him at risk. It'll get him tighter, but not at risk like it is for Ryan Preece, Ricky Stenhouse, not Austin Cindric, because he's got the win. Chase Briscoe.
Yeah, the biggest, the biggest gainer, I guess, was Denny Hamlin. He gained 4 points on the day. So that was pretty good. That's kind of surprising. And
that goes back to the stage points. And I think this was a great addition and change by NASCAR to try and reward a good race, but not necessarily a good finish. And this is a prime example of it. Like I said, even when he first started having clutch issues, he was still hanging around and racing in the top 10. He was just having a tough time on restarts and getting going off pit road, which was what was hampering him. But that was the whole intent of that. And we've talked about it. Think about Ryan Blaney. Where's he at? 5th in points. We've talked about him in Ford. They just can't seem to finish good in a race, even though they run up front and leading and in contention. So
Yes.
that's where those stage points come in. You talk about having a 30-something place finish, yet gaining 4 points. That's exactly how you do that.
Yep, and we've got 12 races in. You know, the next race, the race at Charlotte Motor Speedway, is the next points paying race. That will be the midpoint of the season. The regular season is 26 races. So race 13 closes out the first half of the season, and then we start into the second half of the season. So we'll have to think about some mid-season analysis there.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think we have it on our list of upswing and downswings as far as teams. And you can already see just by what we talked about in one race, let alone the past couple. We'll talk about that in Hot Topics. And then what I get excited about or hope to see some excitement of is through the second half of the season, some of the tracks will hit for a second time. You know, we talked about Kansas. That is a playoff race. So a lot of valuable information gained there, hopefully. You got to close the door or close the gap on Kyle Larson. We talked about it. It's not the car, because there are drivers that are making it work. Those that it's not working, better have it figured out come the second half.
Exactly right. It is not the car. You can't have those drivers coming from the back to the front and say that there's a problem with the car. So I just, I know we still hear it, and people are entitled to their opinion, but we have to remember it is an opinion, and they're not really looking at the whole picture there. So,
one thing a caller they called in with on Sirius XM Speedway with Dave Moody said, okay, even if it is the worst car ever, it is what they have, and they've had it for 3 years. Then you just need to figure out how to drive the worst car ever, because it's what you got.
And let's face it, that is what the crew chief, the driver, that's what everybody on that team is expected to do. And apparently some teams haven't got it figured out. And so you've got to just put your nose to the grindstone and see what you can do to improve upon it. And even Kyle Larson, even though he's had issues taking him out of the race for whatever reason, they are showing some signs of moving in the right direction. So in spite of the car.
And that's what one of the things of you talked about of being a championship contender is overcoming. I think that might have been on one of the midday shows where I heard it pointed out. Kyle Larson has had those DNFs, but he comes back and wins Bristol. Does so the next 2 races, comes back and wins at Kansas. You don't truly ever see him have a slump or a multiple race deal where it's that. So that's what you got to look at, because that is what defines a champion, is overcoming things.
Yes, and I think Kyle Larson is definitely, they mentioned the different milestones that he had hit with this race, and it's pretty impressive. And I just kind of want to list off some of those. He is making history. Larson reached several significant milestones on Sunday. His career laps led are 10,073. He's behind only Kyle Busch at 19,440 and Denny Hamlin, who sits at 15,613 among the full-time active drivers. So that's impressive. Also, he swept the first and second stages. He now has 8 stage wins this season. That is a record for the first 12 Cup Series races of a season. His stage sweep was the 14th of his career. So again, it's just amazing some of the stats that follow Kyle Larson. He is impressive, and I don't think we always appreciate just how impressive he really is.
Well, and I always said this when he was with Chip Ganassi Racing, of if you got him into the playoffs And this part of this falls on Larson himself, because that's when it was wreckers or checkers. He would have his good week. But I think he has greatly improved as a driver. Second off of, you can't deny it, Hendrick Motorsports, always a top-notch organization and level. You put a good or great driver in a good or great car, I mean, you get an amazing race. That's what we saw. Again, 221 laps led, you put those elements together, what do you expect?
Exactly right. And we'll talk more about this tonight on our Hot Topic Sound Off show. That will be a live stream starting at 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central, and 7 o'clock Pacific time. And we'll talk about all of this stuff. Jay and I kind of gave you a little bit of hint of where we are on some of this, but Chris Crichton will be joining us, and we'll hash out all the hot topics that are on our list. So watch for that over at Pampa Racing Radio on YouTube. Also, we finished all of our reviews now for the races at Kansas, but Jay and I will be back, and we'll be doing previews of all the races that are taking place at North Wilkesboro Speedway this weekend, as well as Flat Rock Speedway for the ARCA Menard Series East. So a lot for us to preview coming up later on this week. And then we'll be right back again Monday with all the reviews, as we usually are. So Jay, anything else you want to say before we go? We want to thank everybody for listening.
Certainly do. I know we're building on subscribers and viewership. I know the interview Sharon you talked about had over 700 views now, so we appreciate that. I can't wait for Hot Topics. Last week, Chris caught me off guard. I was waiting to have an argument with him, and he agreed with us. So, yeah, that one threw me for a loop from the get-go. We'll see what happens tonight.
That interview, by the way, was with Jan Qualkenbush, who is the team owner for Jan's Racing and Towing. And this week, too, we do have an interview coming up. Sal and I will be interviewing Trevor Huddleston coming up sometime this week. So watch for that to be coming out. He has agreed to it. We just need to settle on a day and time. But watch for that to be coming out this week. Good deal. So, again, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We really appreciate all of you. And Jay and I will be back with Chris for Hot Topic Sound Off at 10 o'clock Eastern time tonight. Take care, everybody.
See you then.